Welcome back. Time to bring in our panel this afternoon. I'm joined by Claire March and Fiona Scott. Good to see you both this afternoon. Look, Newstart, I want to get some thoughts on this. Fiona, I don't know how you managed to get by when you were a Member of Parliament on the meagre backbencher's salary. I'm talking, of course, about Barnaby Joyce's concerns today. Look, he does have, pressures we all know about given the family situation there, but he and a number of Nationals want something to happen on the Newstart allowance. Where do you see this going within the government?
Look, David, it's a very complex issue, and at the end of the day, you've got to have both the social needs of the community matched up with what the government can afford to pay. I mean, at the moment, 1/3 of every dollar of revenue the federal government has goes towards these types of welfare payments, and the government is right to say that there are other payments that do go into this. Now, I did a bit of a research before coming in here, David, and looked at from my home address in Western Sydney. Now, if I was to catch public transport to get here, it'd cost me $12 to get here. If I was, which is also, I guess, technically Western Sydney. Now, if I was to go to my job in the MLC Centre in the middle of Sydney, that's $10 to get there. Now, it'd probably be foreseeable in my place near Penrith to go to Parramatta, you would say. That's still nearly $10 to do that, which if you were just going for work within Western Sydney, it's still $20 return on public transport. Now, overlay...
There's half your Newstart allowance gone already.
Half it just on public transport. Now, and I did that, for people who are doing the numbers, I did that during peak hour, that you would arrive in those locations at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is completely foreseeable. Now, I think that's where Newstart does become challenging. When you then throw in, well, I've got food and I've got rent. Yes, I know some people have rental assistance. It makes these cases really, really hard. It is a hard thing for people to live on. But at the end of the day, the government has to be able to fund these things too. How much is it going to cost? What is this going to be phased in by? How do you make those things work, and how do you do this that it just doesn't become an inflationary thing, which at the end of the day, the buying power of the increase doesn't really actually help anyone. There's a lot of modelling that has to go into this, and I think the government needs to take due process.
Oh, look, I think anything that puts a bit of upward pressure on inflation and wages, not a bad thing, but it would obviously make it harder to achieve the surplus or protect that surplus over the forward years. Claire, Labor's now saying it does want an increase, not saying how much. Is that the best way to put pressure on the government?
Well, I think pressure's mounting on the government regardless of Labor's position anyway. I think an inquiry to look at what the metrics that you employ to measure what that increase could be is prudent and be expected for any major fiscal investment or cost such as this. I mean, look, we're hearing on when it comes to Newstart, a chorus of people from some of the more unlikely sources, like Barnaby Joyce, like former Prime Minister John Howard. We're hearing it from fiscally conservative economists. We're hearing it from the RBA. We're hearing it from the BCA, as well as ACOS and lots of those sectors that deal with the human impact of policy making like this. I think Labor's is just another voice in a mix of very sound, very considered, compelling arguments about why this needs to be raised. I mean, even if you look at Australian by OECD standards, we are really behind. We're second last.
But it's got to be clear. But it's got to be clear, what it's going to cost and where the money's going to come from. And I don't think we've quite got to that side of the argument yet. And it's a pretty important one, when we're trying to get back to surplus. Look, a few other things. Angus Taylor, Fiona, do you think he's in trouble here? Is this going to blow over? Has he done enough to answer the questions around his indirect stake in Jam Land and the impact that it had through these environmental listings?
Look, David, I think this is a really nasty, spiteful witch hunt. And, at the end of the day, you're talking about a local member of parliament that is an agricultural seat with agricultural land holdings, which his issues would not be mutually exclusive to his property. They would be also issues that wide portions of farmers across his electorate...
Should he have pointed out that he was one of the affected farmers or had an indirect stake in one of the affected farms?
Look, David, he has made disclosures to various agricultural holdings over his time in Parliament. Now,
not that one.
Yeah, sure. There's been a discrepancy here, but I mean, it's been well known that he comes from a pastoral family with long agricultural links. Now, at the same token, I do appreciate, having been a member of Parliament, that part of your job is to go and do street stalls and talk to people in your community, have morning teas where you invite large portions of people in. Does that mean it solicits direct letters from a specific person? Not necessarily, but these things give you a very good litmus test that you go, you know what, this is an issue, I am going to follow it up. And I think the way...
Is that a fair point? Claire, is that a fair point? That constituents can raise concerns. They're not always going to put it down in writing, though, are they?
Oh, look, I think this issue is red hot. I think this is another example of the political class doing damage to its own brand. I think, look, the inquiry, the Senate inquiry, was narrowly avoided, a vote 32 to 33. I think Pauline Hanson, who talked a really big game about making sure that politicians didn't, have their fingers in the till, weren't doing anything improper, had, a very clear message heading into the election about the influence that she would have in this place. I think it's surprising to see that, when tested, not really measure up to the rhetoric. I think absolutely, when it comes to matters of transparency and integrity, that we collectively need to take a really hard line on this, because trust in politicians and trust in the institutions that serve us very, very well as a democracy are at all-time lows, and we all must get together, both and all political parties, to do what we can to try and repair that brand. And consistently, sitting period after sitting period, there are examples of where we could do better, and I would absolutely put this in one of them.
All right. Well, I think we, sadly, are out of time. I'm not sure how this issue will play out over the course of the week, whether we'll still be talking about it next week or not. Claire, Fiona, appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you.